you couldn't resist that. Can I thank the organisers of this demonstration very much for the work they put in bringing you all together. Thank all of you for coming. I want to say a brief word about our good friends in the noble Fourth Estate, in the press and media in this country. I was once described by a marvellous publication called the Daily Mail. I was once described as the voice of the irresponsible, left-led, anti-family, anti-Christian gay whales against the bomb coalition. I think that's a badge of pride. And so I'm very proud as well to be sharing a platform today with the most dangerous woman in Britain. Well, Nicola, it's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it. What viewers saw on their television screens a few nights ago was something new. A far broader political landscape in these islands than the media are keen to show us. There is a wave of anger, not just in this square here in Glasgow, but up and down Scotland and throughout these islands. Anger at the idea of cutting billions from the budgets that support the most vulnerable people in society, while spending even more billions on a new generation of weapons of mass destruction. There are some who may not want to show voters that anger, who may not want to show voters the alternative to the voices who say that decision must go ahead. Our job, your job over the coming weeks is to make sure people hear that alternative voice. You may well be committed already to voting for a political party that opposes Trident, or for an individual candidate who passionately and consistently opposes Trident. That's great, but it's not enough. You need to take that message out day after day. Raise the issue with your friends, your family, your colleagues, your neighbours, people in your community. Make sure they bring the issue of Trident to the top of the political agenda when they decide how they're going to cast their vote. And if you've never been to Faslane yourself, if you've never been to where this evil system of mass destruction is based, if you've never come to join us at a blockade, come over to that stall over there and find out more about the blockade on the 13th of April. Make this moment, if you've never been to a blockade before, take this moment to decide now's the time that you're going to join the blockade on the 13th. I'll be there. I hope to see all of you and many more there as well. People have been campaigning and marching against Trident, against nuclear weapons in this country for so long. We need to do more than march. We need to do more than campaign. We need to win that argument against this decision which the next UK Parliament is due to take. We can win that argument. Let's go out there and convince everybody in this country to vote no to Trident. Thank you very much.
Could the reporters please at least crouch down, because there's a lot of people behind you in wheelchairs that need to be able to see. Thank you very much.
Okay, to continue with the rally, I'm going to ask Jenny, who's one of my co-compares, just to come up and introduce 2 or 3 of the speakers. Okay.
Hello everybody. Such a joyous noise today. How's everybody doing? It's really amazing to be standing up here looking at it. So many people from different places all coming together to say that Scotland wants to be a peaceful global citizen in the world. We want to be responsible neighbours, and that's all we want. So scrap Trident. I'm so glad to see you all here today. I'm Jenny, by the way, and I'm a member of the Scottish Socialist Party here representing the SSP today, so I have to have a wee shout out to that. But it's so good to see people from all over the political spectrum here to stand against this. So make some noise. We want them to hear us in Westminster, in Washington DC. We want them to hear us at NATO headquarters. So make some noise. The first speaker I'm going to introduce today is Nicola, and she's from Human Beings on Benefits. So if we could give her a massive round of applause.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Yes! Good. I'm going to talk to you about defence, because usually when people are trying to justify Trident, they talk about defence. But I want to talk about another form of defence. I want to talk about the welfare state. From each according to his ability, to each according to his need. It sounds like a great safety net, but that safety net is being steadily sabotaged. The government is planning to cut 12 billion from the welfare budget by 2018. That's not much in the context of 100 billion for Trident, but it's a lot of rent, a lot of food, a lot of heating, and for people, including people in work or low incomes, that money is not going to be there. I'm here representing an organisation called Human Beings on Benefits, which helps to provide a peer support network for people who are dealing with the psychological consequences of claiming benefits, which are severe. My personal experience is for disability benefits, disability living allowance and employment and support allowance. The work capability assessment for employment and support allowance breaks disabled people's psychological defences by forcing them to concentrate on what they cannot do, when all their life they've tried to do the opposite. If you don't have a mental health problem when you go into the process, you will by the time you get out. The psychological problems are caused in part by the practical ones. The Trussell Trust estimated that in 2014, 49% of people using food banks, which are a disgrace, had benefit problems. I campaigned with Glasgow Disability Alliance. I once campaigned with a woman who'd worked all her life. She was in her 50s and she was on the lower rate of disability living allowance, which is about to be abolished. She said, I don't know what's going to kill me first, the malnutrition or the cold. Oh. Society comes from the Latin word socius, which means ally. Society is the duty of care we have to one another. The government is spending £100 billion for a hypothetical Armageddon, but starvation isn't hypothetical, cold isn't hypothetical, suicide isn't hypothetical. So why isn't the government defending us from those real enemies? People are suffering from cold and from lack of food now. Why is the government doing nothing about that? Yeah. So I'm asking you to vote. I'm asking you to go to the blockade of Trident at Fast Lane on the 13th of April. I've been there as a Quaker. It's a disgusting place. I also ask you to vote on the 7th of May so the defence budget, the proper defence budget, that is welfare, can be redirected towards people who actually need defence now. On the same bill as Nicola Sturgeion.
That gave us a lot to think about. And our next speaker, as Patrick has already said, is the most dangerous woman in Britain. And as one of my colleagues said to me today, she may be the most dangerous woman in Britain, but she's standing up for the most dangerous thing in our country, weapons of mass destruction. Please welcome to the stage our First Minister, Nicola Sturgeion.
Once again to stand in George Square in my home city help to say very loudly and very clearly a resounding no to Trident nuclear weapons. And it is a particular pleasure to stand here today and look out on what I think is undoubtedly the biggest anti-Trident gathering we've had in George Square ever. Well done. In just over 30 days' time, we have a wonderful opportunity. You know, I stood on a platform on Thursday night in Manchester with the other leaders. And what I said in that debate was this: in just over 30 days' time, we have a chance to change the out-of-touch, remote Westminster system, not just in the interests of ordinary people across Scotland, but in the interests of ordinary people right across the UK. We have a chance to say to that out-of-touch Westminster system, your priorities are not our priorities, and the people intend to rewrite your priorities so that they serve ordinary people. And let me also just say this: I think we may be seeing some signs this morning that the Westminster establishment don't like that prospect and are in something of a panic at the prospect of people rewriting their priorities. And friends, there is no more powerful illustration of the misguided priorities of the Westminster establishment than the proposal to spend £100 billion renewing weapons of mass destruction on the River Clyde. That is the wrong priority, and that priority must change. We just heard more powerful testimony than I can ever give of the better priorities on which we could spend £100 billion of money. I want to see the scarce resources of the country invested in the future of our children, invested in health, in education, in protecting the most vulnerable in our society. I don't want to see a single penny, let alone £100 billion spent on Trident nuclear weapons. weeks ago, in the House of Commons, there were within a very short space of each other 2 votes. And in both of these votes, we saw Labour, Liberal and Tory MPs troop through the same lobby. The first of those votes was to impose a further £30 billion of austerity cuts. And the second of those votes that saw Labour, the Tories and the Liberal Democrats link arms and go through the lobbies was to spend £100 billion on Trident nuclear weapons. What better illustration of the fact that Westminster has its priorities wrong? Well, this election is a chance to rewrite those priorities. You know, people ask me very often at the moment if, in the event of a hung parliament, if we are in discussions with Labour about a working arrangement, if Trident will be a red line. Let me give a very simple answer to that question today. You better believe Trident is. So let us, as Patrick said earlier on, let us over these next 30 days, not just ourselves, be determined to vote against Trident, but persuade others to take this opportunity to put this issue at the very heart of the Westminster debate. If we send to Westminster MPs that are prepared to stand up and vote against the renewal of Trident, then we can ensure that the debate in the next Westminster Parliament is not about the renewal of Trident, it is about getting rid of Trident once. Let's seize this opportunity. It won't come as any surprise to any of you to hear how I want you to vote on May the 7th. It's SNP in case you were wondering. But what I will say to you, and Patrick will say what he will say there, but what I think will unite both of us is this. Do not vote for any candidate that will vote for the renewal of Trident. Let us make sure that we send a progressive alliance of anti-Trident MPs to the House of Commons to say no to Trident once and for all. Thank you very much.
Just a quick reminder, if you're tweeting any photos of the events today, if you could use the hashtag Bairns Not Bombs or the hashtag Scrap Trident, we'll get this trending throughout the UK. So solidarity with the rest of the people around the UK that also want to get rid of these nuclear weapons. So our next speaker today is Katie Clark, who's a Labour MP and who has consistently voted against Trident. She's a rebel and she's saying no to Trident. So I want you to give her a really warm welcome today because she stood up for it.
Well, I'm not just a rebel on Trident, and I've got to say I've been on demonstrations like this for more decades than I care to remember, but I don't think I've seen a more colourful George Square than I see today. It's absolutely great to see so many people here. They tell us that Trident is an independent nuclear deterrent. Well, it's not independent. Both technically and politically, it's reliant on the United States of America, and it cannot be used without their authority. Those nuclear weapons can never be used, because if they are, their destructive potential will be so immense. And it's not a deterrent. It's of no use whatsoever for the major threats that we face in the world today, of terrorism, of all the insecurities of global hunger, and of climate change. All of the arguments that are put forward as to why we should have nuclear weapons are the same arguments that can be used for any country on this planet to have nuclear weapons. And the reality is, the more countries that have nuclear weapons, the more likely they will be used, either deliberately or by accident. All of the political parties, including my own, and I think the SNP, I don't know, because they haven't voted on the issue when we voted on it in Parliament, are saying they want to spend at least 2% of our gross national product on defence. Trident's included in that at the moment. I don't believe that we should be spending £100 billion on nuclear weapons, but more than that, I want to see it spent on what we need. The reality is, children in every part of this land are reliant on food banks. Hundreds of thousands of people have had their benefits sanctioned, and I'm sure Nicola would be able to tell us more about that. What I want to see that money spent on is building council houses, investing in our welfare state, in our hospitals, in our schools. I want to see money put into arms diversification to actually build the kind of socially useful economy that we all need. I've been a Member of Parliament for 10 years, and I voted against Trident and nuclear weapons on every occasion that I've been able to do so. If I am elected again, I will do that again, and I will work with the many Labour Party members up and down the country who are against Trident.
Labour, Tories, same old
Let's make sure that we build the alliances that we need to rid this country of nuclear weapons, to rid Europe of nuclear weapons, to rid the world of nuclear weapons. And let's start by dismantling all 225 of those nuclear warheads that are part of the Trident system. Thank you.
Can I just make another quick safety announcement? See if the people over at the left over here could just move back slowly. It's my left actually, where I'm pointing. If you could just, there's a wee bit of pressure, if you could just move back slowly, the people that are quite near the stalls, just to relieve a wee bit of pressure. Thanks very much for your cooperation. I'll now just ask Angela, another one of my co-compeers, to introduce some other speakers.
Hello, George Square. My name's Angela McCormick. I'm going to have the pleasure and the privilege to be here today and introduce another three of our wonderful speakers at today's absolutely amazing event. I'm a member of the Stop the War Coalition, Scottish CND, and like many of us here today, we have marched, and what a glorious turnout here today, and we will march until every last one of those weapons on the Clyde is removed, dismantled, and put in the scrap heap. Part of our campaign has involved support from many of the trade unionists and activists up and down the country, so it gives me great pleasure to introduce Anne Henderson. She's the Assistant Secretary of the Scottish Trade Union Congress. So So please put your hands together and give a big, big welcome to Anne Henderson. Thank you. So thank you very much for the opportunity for the STUC to be here today. It is, of course, not the first time that the STUC and trade unions of Scotland have been on the streets opposing nuclear weapons in Scotland. In 1961, as some of you will remember, when the Tory government made the agreement that the United States could bring Polaris missiles to the Clyde, the STUC took action immediately, and the trade unions joined forces with many members of society on the streets against that. By 1963, the STUC conference in Dunoon had adopted a clear position, unilateral nuclear disarmament, and has gone on throughout the years to campaign against nuclear weapons. And I know that many of you will have been with myself when I was a member of the National Union of Railwaymen and other trade unions in London in the 1980s campaigning against cruise missiles. In 2007, Scottish CND and the STUC worked together on an important report that challenged some of the statistics that are thrown around about the number of jobs that would be lost were Trident replacement to not go ahead. And that is, of course, a really important discussion for all of us, for the families and the workers who will be affected by the decision to remove the base, to remove Trident and remove nuclear warheads. And looking at diversification and how we use the skills and talents of all the workers in our country is extremely important. And I think it's quite urgent that the governments allocate resources and research included to look at what that diversification would look like. We know that we could do, as we've heard today, better things with the money that we have available for public spending. But we need to look at how we're going to do that using the skills that our workforce has. In last year, in the run-up to the referendum, we were part of a very big discussion around what would a just Scotland look like. And we made clear at the STUC with all our trade unions that just Scotland was committed to nuclear disarmament, but also to that transition plan on spending. But we need state intervention, we need public ownership of the energy industry, and we need public ownership of our resources. And I just refer people as well to the critical situation now facing the workers at Longannet. Another case for state intervention to save workers' jobs. I want to just end with going back to 1963. That STUC conference in 1963 heard from Mick McGahey, the National Union of Mine Workers, speaking against Polaris on the Clyde. And this is what the decision of what he said. The conference is opposed in every way to the government's efforts in having an independent nuclear deterrent. Congress views with disgust this hideous investment in Polaris submarines by the government, whose only possible use is the massacre of workers and trade unionists in other lands. That stands true today. No replacement of Trident, no massacre of workers and trade unionists in other lands. We stand in solidarity with workers abroad. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Before I introduce the next speaker, I want to raise with you the question that this day is part of a period of action, and I want to encourage all of you to find out about the big blockade at Faz Lane, right at the heart of it, on the 13th of April. You can sign up, you can pledge, and all those that are involved in that civil resistance and that peaceful protest are encouraging people to get along and show support. Let's go to Faz Lane, let's be humans for peace, let's shut this down. So I encourage you to support the 13th of April, big blockade. And And with that in mind, we chanted on the demo today, welfare not warfare, Bairns not bombs. Our next speaker, I want you to give her a big cheer. It's Sasha Callahan, an activist and campaigner from Disability History Scotland. Please welcome Sasha.
Okay, I may not be the most dangerous woman in Scotland, but I'm a very angry woman.